Welcome to the Rugby Connection podcast. This week with me, Tim Swinson.
Hello and welcome back to the final whistle, brought to you by the Rugby Connection podcast. Well, our next guest, he's managed to hit the century mark twice in his club career, once at Newcastle Falcons, once at Glasgow Warriors. He got a Pro 12 title in that time. He then hung up the boots, but then decided to come back and get Saracens back to the Premiership. And during all that time, he also got 38 caps for Scotland. It's Tim Swinson. Tim, thank you so much for coming on. How are you getting on?
Okay, Murray. Good, thanks. Yeah, I'm enjoying the real world, proper job. I thought I'd be wearing a suit most of the time, but post-COVID, sort of work attire has pretty much gone to jeans and t-shirt, which is a bit of a disappointment.
Well, then you're disappointed not to have to wear a suit.
Yeah, I always sort of assume, you retire, go into an office, suit, right? Yeah, that sort of stuff. And I've probably worn my suit 3 times. Once for the first day, obviously turned up in suit the first day, quickly took the tie off because no one else was having it, and then had an event just at the end of March. But yeah, even when you're presenting to clients now, it's very much open collar, and yeah. I mean, it's just what it is. It's so much harder though. You have to work out what your day looks like to what to wear. Whereas before you just chucked a suit on and it was easy.
Simpler times.
Yeah.
First question that we ask all our guests is just to get the ball rolling. What actually got you into rugby in the first place, Tim?
So I grew up in northwest London, and I went to a prep school down there, and they're basically quite worried about injuries. And so rather than having properly trained coaches, referees, and taking it seriously, they just put a weight limit in. So I can't remember what the weight limits were, but there's a weight limit for under 10s and under 13s, which were the two sort of main teams. And I was way above both of them. I was a big child. I would like to say it wasn't, I was quite fat, but I was a big child anyway. I'm also quite stubborn. And basically, I got told I couldn't play rugby at school. I mean, on the good side, it got me into fencing and hockey, which are 2 sports I played for, I think, for the next 10 years. But I went to play at a club called Ruislip in sort of northwest London, and more of a sort of sticking 2 fingers up to my school to say that I could do it. Not that I knew what that meant at 8, 9 years old. And when you're bigger than everyone, rugby's a great game, especially as a child. So I did that, and then went to boarding school, and I was still one of the big kids. And luckily for me, I continued to be one of the big kids until I got to adult rugby, where I was distinctly average. But thankfully I got used to that, and I worked out quite well how to deal with it.
Quite happy enough.
Yeah.
Good enough. So I mentioned it in the intro that you played for Newcastle, you played for Glasgow. You then announced your retirement.
Yeah. But
then you came out. So what drew you, first of all, out of retirement, and what drew you to Saracens as well?
So, I mean, the symbol that I grew up next to Saracens. First rugby game I watched was Saracens. I played as a curtain raiser in Wasps against Saracens against Wasps for Ruislip when I was 9. One of my first games of rugby I ever played. So they've been kind of like the team I've supported. But the real reason, there's several reasons. I mean, I played with most of the coaching staff. So Joe Shaw, he's either head coach, director. They changed their names recently, but he's one of the coaches there. He was my first chance, my university coach. He was then my teammate at Newcastle, and we've known each other for going on almost 20 years now. Ian Peel, their forwards coach, he was my academy coach at Newcastle. He coached me at university. I played against Adam Powell, obviously played against most of the squad, and it was the kind of thing that we always talked at contract times, and for one reason or another, it just didn't quite work out. Either it's something to do with playing for Scotland or something else, but it just didn't work out. It seemed like a good opportunity, and so he saw I retired. They were going down to the championship. They needed an old second row to basically help the young guys not be so green, and I think like a prime candidate really. So they rang me up, and it was a no-brainer. I mean, not only was it a great chance to go and play for your childhood club, playing for guys that I'd always said I wanted to play for again, because I thought they're some of the best coaches I've ever had. Also going to play in the year in the championship for Saracens seems like going to win a lot of games, which is always a great pool. And it was only ever supposed to be 1 year.
Yeah.
And then it became 2. It almost became 3. But I got threatened with divorce by my wife, because my family stayed up in Scotland while I went down there.
Right.
Because it was supposed to be a year. It was COVID.
Yeah.
My daughter started school. We didn't want to rock the boat. Went for only a year, and then it became 2, and it was getting tough. We're renovating a house because we had just moved house.
Yeah.
And so she was looking after 2 kids in the midst of a renovation, and she was doing a great job, but it was quite a lot, to be fair to her. And I got offered a 3rd year. I was really tempted. Selfishly, I would have loved to have done it. It was great. Like it was a brilliant, like, I wouldn't quite say lifestyle, but I enjoy going to work. It's great spending so much time with your mates, and it's also all I'd known.
Yeah.
I guess retiring and going into a new world's quite daunting. You sort of think that I've spent 15 years in a changing room with 40 guys, roughly the same age, same background, love the same sort of things, have the same goals. It's quite easy. And I think going into an office where the dynamics are very different was quite daunting, to be fair. So
fair enough. You just do what the wife tells you, though.
like everyone, pretty much. And to be fair, it was my kids were suffering as well. They miss me a lot, and so it is definitely the right decision. At 36, I was really eking out the midnight oil on the career. I enjoyed it, but when I was on my last social, I sat at a table with 17, 18-year-olds who were born the year before I made my debut. Yeah, it was stupid stuff. Like you sort of tell them, oh, you know, like the back line used to stand on the back foot of the scrum when I started. And like Adam Hastings, I never knew that. When did that start? So like you start mentioning like Carl Heyman, like what one of the young guys was like, oh, Vinny's a really good prop as in Vinny Koch. Like, is he probably the best tight head you play behind? I was like, yeah, probably the second best. Carl Heyman was probably the best. I was like, who's that? Yeah, exactly. Like he's the 1000th All Black. He probably changed the position. He's probably the reason why Vinny is a tight head prop. Like, yeah, it's that sort of thing. You sort of just realise that I was going to clubs and all my mates were coaches, and like every Premiership club I went to, there was someone in the backroom staff that I knew. I played with. Like, we went to London Irish, their team doctor I went to university with and played at uni with. It's just like you're walking in and you're like, wow, you're still playing. It's like, yeah, I know.
Just kind of thanks, I guess.
Yeah, but it was definitely time to move on. It had been holding on for too long, and yeah.
Fair enough. No, I'm glad that you admit it, because not many players in retirement do. They kind of dwell and could have done a bit more and almost pushed out essentially, which you don't want.
Yeah, so that's one thing I keep reminding myself is I was incredibly lucky. I got to retire at my childhood club.
Yeah,
like having been involved with the Premiership final that we lost, and being wanted by a club as well, and walking and having a job like having organised a job to go into, which seems to suit me quite well. Like in terms of that side of things, I feel like my retirement's gone pretty well. I mean, it's been tough, I think, socially and with the family, but job-wise and when I left rugby, I think it's gone pretty well.
And you've done. I mentioned it again in the introduction.
Yeah.
You're not many players get to hit a century on club appearances, but you did it twice.
Yeah, I think. I mean, yeah, I was quite lucky. I think it's one of those things that I think is going to stop happening as much. I think hitting those numbers, like you look at the guys at Saracens, for example. I mean, Alex Good, I think, is at 350 around there. Jackson Ray hit 300 games for Saracens earlier this season. A lot of those guys who've been sort of Vinipolas, Owen Farrell, like those guys, they're all up in the late hundreds at the very least, and most over 200. And I think that's going to become rarer. It's also going to become rarer that you stay at a club for as long as you do. I think as the salary cap gets smaller, there's going to be fewer and fewer older players staying at clubs. They're going to move to clubs that maybe trying to get that last ounce of stuff out to win a championship and take you on a cheap deal, and where they try to make a financial decision by getting a young player that can do some of the job and hopefully they step up. Yeah, I think it's one of the bad consequences of the reduction of the salary cap in England is that the level of teams are still great if you have their top side.
Yeah.
But I don't think going to be able to manage to compete as regularly in the Premiership and in Europe year in, year out as the Premiership was doing a few years ago.
That's fair. You've seen it in just recent years that not many English teams get past the quarterfinals of Champions Cup. Maybe this season's a bad example because there's been a few Saracens and Tigers, but I think that's more group of players that have managed to pull that.
But then if you look at both of those teams, in years gone by, Saracens winning that quarterfinals, like almost not guaranteed, but expected.
Yeah,
and they're at the top of the Premiership, so they're doing well in the Premiership. And in years gone by, they would have expected to do well in both.
Yeah.
But I just don't think the squad is large enough with the quality of players to do both consistently. They've still got amazing players, and I think their team's great. I have nothing but good things to say about Saracens. But there's definitely a different team there now.
Yeah.
Like they've got this really good 23 to 30 players. And previously they would have had older guys coming in, former World Cup winners, everyone. And now that's not the case because of the salary cap. Leicester aren't doing as well as they did in England yet in the Premiership, but they're in the European Cup.
Yeah.
That's the bit of the issue I feel is that you can't do both. And I think that will make rugby suffer in the Premiership.
So if it was down to you, I don't know how you would do it, but what would be your ideal salary cap? What would be for each club?
You see, I think the issue is partially that the salary cap is one thing that's stopping it. I think there are too many teams. Okay. I don't think there is enough quality to be able to have what was 12 teams. At one point they thought they'd have 13 to have enough teams to justify having that salary cap. Like salaries in England are larger at the top end than they are in Scotland for the most part, and part of that is because the salary cap was there, so they pay the top players more because they'll get offered more from other clubs. But I think there are very few clubs that have players of that caliber that genuinely deserve that money, and some of them get paid that because they're they're the next best, so we need to pay them that money because they're our fifth best player. And so it's not just a case of chucking more money at the problem. I think it's at some stage there'll need to be a restructuring of what league rugby looks like at a national level and a European level.
I'm just going to ask again, like, what would you do then? Because I'm more of a listener.
I'd have a smaller domestic league in England, for example.
Okay.
There would be arguments for having a European Super League, perhaps. That it's similar in a similar way that football, when they tried to start up.
Yeah.
It would be fantastic for the 10, 12 clubs who are in it. It would be where the real money, everything is. And it'd be terrible for the game. So I don't know whether that's the really long-term answer, but I think it's a case of like fewer domestic teams in England to make the quality better, somehow control pay or standardize pay to a certain extent.
Yeah.
Because at the moment it's a little bit of a wild west, depending on who your agent is, whether you're moving club. Yeah, like it's not as standardized. And I think if you look at a lot of it's a lot more money. Look at the NFL. They have standardized rookie contracts for the first 5 years. So do the NBA.
Yeah.
I don't know whether that is always the answer, but it would be some way to sort of control it slightly more. I don't know. It's a tough one because I think we're in a very different place to any other sport in that they're both equally as important, whereas a lot of other sports, the international game and the club game tends to have an upper hand.
Yeah, no, I agree. I completely get where you're coming from as well. So that's how it is a tricky one. Like even hearing you trying to come up with just a solution that you would have off, it's a challenge. So good luck to whoever.
Definitely. I think there's been a consistent talk of like a global game, whether it's international or clubs, and it would be great to some extent, but then what about the clubs? There's a lot of links to clubs in France, in London, sorry, not in London, in England, that's why people watch. You go to watch Bath play, even though they've been crap for a couple of years, because you go and watch Bath play at the Rec, and it's what you do on a Saturday.
Yeah.
And you don't necessarily get that. Whereas, say you had a global club side, and it was like, I don't know, the England Broncos, and they played in a global Super League. So why are we watching the England Broncos play the team from Japan? Like it doesn't make any. Why do we need to go and watch this? We already have England playing Japan in the World Cup. So it's a tough decision. It's a tough thing. I don't think rugby will survive as it has for a long time. I think something needs to change, but thankfully I'm not the one making decisions.
I'm not making those decisions either. That's way above my knowledge and grade, and everyone else can do it. Tell us what we're doing. We can talk about it. That's all.
Yeah, fair enough. It makes sense.
We've got some fan questions coming in for you. So Ollie has asked, where does your time at Saracens rank in your career?
It's a tough, like, as a 2-year period, it was fantastic. It is, Saracens as a club is everything that you hear as a pro player and everything you see from the outside. They are a group of players that are really well attached. I realise that's part of the fact that I knew a lot of them beforehand, and I played a lot, so I feel part of it. But you really feel part of something. You are supportive in everything you do by the club, and we're talking from Nigel and Lucy. So Nigel and Lucy's his daughter, who's now the CEO, all the way down to Roy, who was the kit man when I was there, to the people that like everyone is so kind and so willing to make what you do better. And it's not just about you as a rugby player. Obviously, they want you to perform and you need to perform, but they're keen to help you learn. They're keen to help you go to find out what you want to do afterwards, keep help do degrees. And yeah, it's just a really good environment. It was a perfect fit for me where I was at the time. I mean, there's still my first year at Newcastle was great. Being a student playing 25, 30 games in the Premiership.
There you go.
I mean, it was great. No, it was really good. It was a really good way to finish. It was everything I expected it to be, which I don't think you can often say about any experience.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. I don't think you could top that, really.
No, definitely not. Like it got to the sort of midway through the first year when I had a conversation with Mark McCall about staying for longer. It was kind of along the lines of, look, I know we said this was a year, but I quite enjoy it. You seem to think I'm quite good and I'm doing a good job. So is there any way I can stay longer? And at that point, I fired my. I didn't fire. I spoke to my agent and she's like, I don't need you anymore. Like I'm not going anywhere else. If I'm playing at Saracens. I'm talking to them myself.
Yeah.
Like it's not a question of, oh, am I going to play for this team or whoever? It's here or retiring. It's that sort of thing. Like it was a really good place to be.
Good. I don't need an agent. I could do all this. I don't need an agent to book guests. It's all on me.
Yeah.
It's always frightening when you say it, but
yeah, I think agents have their place. They certainly do. I think they are useful for young players, but like anything, only a good one is useful. A bad one is not. And there are a lot of not good agents, not because they're sharks, not because they want to screw people over, but again, comparing to football, there's more money in football. If you're looking at the bottom end of playing groups in Premiership in Scotland, you're looking at guys who are getting paid less than 20 grand. Average bit of money for an agent would be say 6%. So at the bottom level, you could be getting like 800 quid to £1,000 for negotiating this contract. And it's not just the negotiation, but it's also the player wants to ring you up, talk about something that you need to go and see them. They want boots, and the best one in the world, when the guy's on 12, 15 grand, he's not going to be getting given free boots by Adidas.
Sure.
So you end up buying them. And so it's really difficult. And unless you get a superstar coming through who kind of bankrolls your whole operation, it's a tough job. And you then have to start trying to make decisions on where to cut. And it also players struggle to understand that they won't make you get a contract because you have an agent. You need to actually be good at rugby, or need to do this. You also need to perform as well. And so the agents get a lot of flack. It's tough. It definitely say a good one. I've had two good ones in my career. One of them, a guy called Mike Howe, who obviously did wonders for my career, convinced me to go to Glasgow and made the right decision and was a really good sounding board. And then Sean Longstaff, when Mike retired, and they're very different people. I was at different stages of my career, but they were what I needed at the time. And I think they're in their own way both pretty good.
There we go. Happy days. Yeah. Sticking with Saracens. Right. So it's a bit of a game for you. I'm going to say something and I want you to guess who told me this.
Right. Are you going to give me any clue? Like, is it a player? Is it?
Yeah, it's a player, yeah. So
at Saracens.
Currently at Saracens, yes.
All right.
So, and tell us about your famous first meeting at Sarries.
Right. Yeah. So
Fine.
so I'm taking this as guys at Six Nations Lodge.
No, this is a friend of the show. We've had a guest. We've had him on as a guest, and I asked if he could tell us anything about you, and that's what we got back.
So then that might. So I reckon he'd be a Scottish player.
It is.
And if it's Saracens, it'll either be Sean Maitland or Duncan Taylor. So I reckon it's Sean.
It's neither. Andy Christie.
Oh wow! 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 That's. I mean, it's tough to remember. You know, like Andy Christie is probably the least Scottish out of the three of them.
Fair enough.
I mean, I mean, the first year I was at Saracens, he was in England camp with the test side. As basically a crash test dummy. He basically got to stand in the way of the test team and get run at. But yeah, probably the least Scottish out of the three of them. Right. So I used to change next to Andy every day. So like in Saracens changing room, it's not just one big room. It's an old school rugby club. There's like 6 or 7 smaller changing rooms. So you're probably in rooms of 6 to 10, depending on which room you're in.
Okay.
And so, I mean, I said I was in the same room as Andy. For the first year, Andy wasn't allowed to change in our changing room because he was in the academy.
Okay.
So he would have to come and ask Mako for permission to use the shower at the end of the day.
Right.
So yeah, but the second year he got promoted and was allowed to move in. We had a couple of spaces open up. No, he's done well, to be fair to him.
Yeah, nice. Good guy. So what about this famous first meeting you had, apparently?
I think, I don't know, I think it was quite cathartic. I retired in 2020 mainly because I hated rugby, quite honestly. I had not particularly had a great time in probably the 4 years beforehand. I mean, I'd had several like serious injuries, like I fractured my tibial plateau, so like split the top of my tibia in half. I had my ankle reconstructed. I had my finger tendon reattached, and in sort of a, I can't remember it. So that was 6 months, 4 months. I've basically been injured, I think, for 14 out of 24 months. Like, and I wasn't like, obviously, like I'd say the peak of my career. I would say it was probably like 2015, 2016, where I was the strongest I was. I was really fit, and I never quite got back from those injuries in the sense of being able to do what I did, I think. And it just was a really tough time mentally. Like, I think there's a lot of stress going on. I had our first child, and that wasn't particularly easy. It basically was just a whole period of time where stress was not great. And I fell out of love with rugby completely. I also setting up the Players Association wasn't particularly good. I felt victimized a lot by how I was treated because I did it. I was supported a lot by the players, and I'm still proud that I did it. But in hindsight, it was a lot of faff, it took a lot out of me. I mean, having to tell your friends they're wrong at times, and it was a tough position. I think it was tough doing it as a player playing at the time. I think if you look at like Damien Hockley, he set up in England at very much a different era, but he did it after he retired through injury.
Yeah.
And so he was a slightly removed, whereas I was in there every day training. It wasn't particularly good. I needed a change. I was ready to retire, go and do a job. I didn't want to do anything with rugby. I mean, even now, I've watched 2 games of rugby since I retired, and it wasn't very good, basically. And I think I got to Saracens, and I can't remember what we were talking about, but I basically answered the question and then went on for probably 5-10 minutes. I feel like I blacked out. I don't really remember how long it was, but it was getting a lot of this off my chest and feeling undervalued within Scottish rugby, and not really enjoying it. I do have to say, on the other side of that, the medical team, the medical staff, particularly James Robson,
Yes,
really brilliant support. They supported me a lot, not just my physical injuries, but this stuff as well. There's got to be a lot of credit to James, Stu Patterson, Dave Pugh, like those guys, like were really good, and I can't fault them. But yeah, it wasn't a particularly great time for me. And then went to Saracens, and it was fantastic. So yeah,
that's good. That's fair. What I am admiring you for how much praise you're giving to Saracens. So
it's part of that thing that I know it's the last place I was at,
yeah,
and I did really enjoy it and all that sort of stuff. But they generally do a lot of stuff really well. I mean, they're not perfect, but the outside stuff that they support, the way that you are supported through everything from everyone, is brilliant. And I think at times I had that at Glasgow. I think when Al was captain, and particularly in my first, 3 years, maybe 4 years, when we won in 2015, up until that point, I felt this very similar thing in Glasgow. We had a great team ethos, we're together, and then Al retired, I think, was a big loss. He was very much the culture. He really set the culture, and I think he will do a good job as the MD.
Yep.
Because he is that culture, and it was a tough shoes to fill. And I think at the time, asking Johnny Gray, as a very capable rugby player, but a 21-year-old who was quite shy, to fill the role of Al Kellogg, who's a 50 capped international, had been captain since he was at Glasgow, and I'm sure you've spoken to him or at least seen him speak. He knows how to control the room.
Yeah.
And I think I don't know, but there seemed to be the expectation that Johnny would become captain, do what Al did, and it would all be fine. Johnny's a great player and can lead, but a very different way to Al. And I don't think he was set up for success at that stage.
Fair enough. I get what you're saying, because I've never spoke to Al personally, but I have seen him speak, and it's almost very, holy shit, Al Celtic speaking, like, shh, everyone listen.
Yeah, he's very good at it. He's very good at being a leader, very good at getting his point across. It helps when you're 6'7", lanky, and look like a melted wheelie bin. But like, he's physically imposing. He's got a lot of history about him, and he works hard at it. It's a craft, and he's obviously prepped and learned how to do it, and he does it well.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
We've got a question from Cam, one of my co-hosts. He's asked, which I've changed it up a little bit, because I don't think he really played for more than one team, but what Premiership fixture got you or the team most fired up? So we'll go for your time in Newcastle, more for that, and aim for the Pro 12, Pro 14 when you were there for Glasgow. What game got you most hyped up?
So it's a really interesting question. I think the most obvious one that is probably the most recent one getting hyped up for was the championship playoff first leg at Ealing.
Yeah.
So in the build up to that season, it was a COVID season, completely ruined. Like, it was all sorts of crap going on left, right, and centre. But at the start of it, they had a pre-season competition with, I think, Doncaster, Ealing, Saracens, maybe one other team. And Saracens, we put out a really young team, and we'd lost. Ealing won this cup, and they celebrated like it was the World Cup. And to be fair to them, they played well and did all that stuff. And but then the whole feeling throughout the season, we're going to beat you, we're going to get promoted, and all this sort of stuff. And so lumping on to Saracens in a feeling of it's everyone against us, people want us, put us down because we're successful, and basically that became the focus of it. And because of the way the season's out, we had, I think, 3 weeks to prepare for this, and we had a really good first half of rugby, like brilliant first. I can't remember, we're up 20-30 points to nil, maybe even slightly more, and we're all really fired up for that. But my outstanding memory of it, there's two of them actually. One is at half time, I don't know if you've ever been to the ground. The change room's a little bit away, you have to walk through the crowd to get to them.
Okay.
And we were so focused on not just winning the game, beating the crap out of this team, proving so far that we were better. And there's this memory of mine of Owen, like, walking backwards in front of the whole team, literally, like, surrounded by Ealing fans, pretty much screaming at us to not take our foot off the throats, not, like, basically just not let up. And we ended up winning 60-0. And then there's a cathartic release in the change room afterwards. So I'm sure you've seen the videos of the Tiki Tonga.
Yes.
That Saracens do after the game. But that one, like, it was kind of like a release. At least I felt it was a release. You know, you just won the first leg 60-0. I think you might be okay in the second leg. There's obviously that we're back in the Premiership. It's sort of a bit of like, we've got over this, and that it was a really small room. It was just the team, backroom staff. I think some of the squad who had travelled were in there. I can't remember, but it was loud. Like, beer was going everywhere, and like those two moments in that for Saracens, I think, in Glasgow, it's a really interesting one. Like, Munster always just
Fair enough. Good
really
game.
I mean, just hate playing fucking Munster. And having said that, in talking about emotive games, I know it's a bit off the topic, but when Anthony Foley died, the former number 8, we were the first team to play at Thurman Park afterwards. And I have never, international games, ever been in a stadium with that emotion in it. There was no doubt that we were going to lose that game at all.
I think it's hard for anyone to go to.
And then Keith Earls got sent off for tip tackle and Fraz Brown, and it just galvanised them even more.
Yeah.
And they were outstanding. But in terms of emotion, that was probably one of the most emotive games I've ever played in.
Yeah. So would you say that your most valuable memories as well for Glasgow and
No, so you like, this is a really interesting thing. You think, like, I look back at my career, you talk about games, like none of really like the games actually are memories. It's stupid things like playing for Glasgow, beating Leicester at Leicester 43-0.
Yeah.
It's not the game I remember. It's jogging back with, I think, Chris Fazaro, Ryan Wilson, maybe one or two others.
Yeah.
We were pissing ourselves laughing because this move we practiced all week in a kind of like, this will never worked hook, line and sinker. Like it was one of those days, everything we did went perfectly. Like it just happens. But I've told this story to someone else, but we got into Scotland camp the week after, and Grant Gilchrist came up to us and like, I knew something was going on with that line out. There was no way you would do that so badly that it wasn't special, that you had something planned. And it's like, even the guy in Edinburgh watching on TV knew something was going to happen. Like, it's that sort of thing. That's probably a good one as well. A load of it is the stuff off the field. It's those memories that you remember. And that's the bit, like, I mean, it's kind of ridiculous. Newcastle, perennial relegation battle.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think I was in 6 of them in my first 6 years at Newcastle, and we lost the 6th. So, you know, we stayed up 5, so 5 wins out of 6 is pretty good. But the one before that, the whole memory, we were standing on the pitch at Bath, listening on a radio. That's how long ago it was. There was a radio. It wasn't an iPhone. It was an actual radio with an antenna.
Yeah.
And we're listening to Leeds play Northampton. Leeds needed a bonus point for us to get relegated, and they had the ball on the 5-meter line, and they basically dropped it over the line. And then we had the best piss up I have ever been on a rugby bus, going back from Bath to Newcastle. And as much as piss ups after winning games is great, there's nothing that compares to a piss up in the relief of not being relegated. I was
that'd be special. And
then my first year at Newcastle, there was a period we won 11 games in a row. And I mean, I was a young kid. Like, I was playing with, like, so in my first year, there was like Jamie Noon, Matt Burke started, then retired really early. So I never actually played with him. But like Johnny Wilkinson was there, Matthew Tate, Carl Heyman, guy called Johnny Golding, who played for England, Phil Dowson, who's now director of rugby at Northampton, like Adam Balding, who had played for England for a while. Like, this team was like guys I'd watched growing up, that sort of thing. And I basically ended up playing with them and then going out on the piss with them. And so I was a student getting paid money to play rugby, going out with people I'd watched on TV 2-3 years ago, and then just getting absolutely smashed in Newcastle. It was brilliant. That period of my time was like, if this is what professional rugby is like, hallelujah.
I love that. I'm trying to think how to word this question. Dan McFarlane has asked 2 questions. Is Scotland good enough to get out of the World Cup group for this year? Yes, I think they're good enough. I think that's a simple answer.
Dan McFarlane, like,
I don't know. Do you know Dan McFarlane?
Yeah, he's the head coach at Ulster. Used to be Glasgow.
Oh no. This guy's a different Dan McFarlane.
Okay, fair enough. I was like, when you said the name, I was like, this is weird.
No. I mean, that'd be a very cool one. No, not Ulster's Dan McFarlane. Just a guy I know called Dan McFarlane. Sorry. Is Scotland good enough to get out of the Rugby World Cup group, and what they have to do to get to a semi-final?
So I think they're good enough.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean they will. I I think you like you see the games in the last year. I think they've been unbelievable, and the league. It's one of the things I've actually talked to a couple of players that have stopped playing international rugby, have retired about, is that I watched the France-Scotland game and I was gutted that I wasn't there. Not because I thought I should be playing, because those guys are great. I think second rows at the moment are really good. Richie Gray's having a resurgence.
Yes.
I personally can't believe I played so many games instead of him back in the day. But for whatever reason, Scott Johnson loved a short kid from England over Richie. But but so far, like when Ireland get ahead in games, they just look like they're never going to lose. They're just going to have that momentum, and it's just rolling, it's going. And I don't think Scotland have had that in games, or at least consistently.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a lot of pressure on that last game. Ireland, is it in Paris as well? It's Ireland, Scotland. And I mean, depending on how the other games go,
Of course, yeah.
But in general, I'm assuming that whoever wins that will be going through to the next round.
That's fair.
I think there's a lot to be said for the mental preparation that Ireland have shown in the last year.
Yep.
And that's not to say that Scotland don't have it or can't do it. And I think it's obviously something that's massively important, but skillfully, the way that Scotland plays, like they've been amazing. They've been amazing for the last couple of years, and the way they played in the autumn and in the Six Nations has been brilliant. It's just if they can get that slight nudge over the line to become mentally just brutal and not let up, I think that would be that's my thing. And then getting to the next round, something that so one of my first coaches at Newcastle, a guy called John Fletcher, who's now pathway coach in Scotland.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think he's the head of the whole academy. But he always used to say, like, yeah, knockout rugby is knockout rugby. Like anything can happen. And I mean, you look at the example I use, the 2015 World Cup. I mean, Scotland were screwed over by bad refereeing decision, which, to be fair to him, he made a mistake, but he did follow the letter of what he was allowed to do to try and rectify it. I still stand by that. If that was Nigel Owens or Wayne Barnes, he would have gone to TMO and done whatever to get the right decision, but that's because they're them. But that's, by the way, seeing how Ireland and Argentina played, I still think we'd have got to the semi-final, and possibly because we saw that game. I can't remember if it was Argentina or Ireland who got through, but they had such a big game, such a massive high, that I think we could have taken them the week after. But you say, like, this, the emotion of a World Cup is vastly different. Having played in it, it's very different to even other international games. They're quick. There's little turnaround. It's everyone's like childhood dream, pretty much, playing the World Cup. So use all that going ahead as well.
I mean, I was going to say, could you describe that game in just one word? 2015 against Australia.
I have several memories of it.
Mm-hmm.
One is just before I can't remember whether it was the start of the second half or end of the first half. Basically, I think it might have been Bennett scored, and I'm running down the touchline. Like I think we're going to warm up, but we're all running down the touch. See him say we're celebrating. I'd fully forgotten that I was actually a player in this team. I was a full-on fan, and like you know, when you celebrate too hard, you get a bit lightheaded.
Of course.
I had that. That brought me back to realization that I could be going on in this game. So that was one of them. And then there's one with Bennett. I don't know whether this is from a video afterwards or anything, but I've got this image of Bennett scoring in the rain under the posts as well. Yeah. And then the ball in the line out before the penalty that gets kicked to put Australia ahead. I mean, it was a move I dummied out. I remember dummying, turning and just watching this ball in slow motion. You could just like see it. You go in there, you go, watch. It hit. I can't remember it hit off Dave's hands or went over the top, but I'd just been like, oh. And then it like literally that whole bit replays in my mind in slow motion.
Yeah.
And then it's sort of like a blur of clouds and a penalty, and we were all just like, what? We've just fucking lost that. Yeah, so they're probably my 3 outstanding memories of that.
That's fair. I think it's the only game I've actually broke my television. I've been very close a number of times, but I just finished high school. I'm just about to start college.
Yeah.
Rugby's still everything. But apart from the controversial at the end, this game had everything.
Yeah.
And then the Bennett interception under the sticks in the rain, I'm like, oh my God, we're going to get to a World Cup semi. And then, no, penalty Australia. I'm like,
Yeah. So talking about games that had everything, was it 2018? Yeah, it was 2018 at Twickenham, where we're down like
the draw.
Yeah, where we're down all the points at half time. Like all the points, not just some, all of them.
All the points,
like, so like I was sat at my mate's house in Edinburgh.
Yeah.
And we were watching that, and at halftime we were in shock. Like we were thinking of going into Edinburgh just to drown our sorrows.
Yeah.
And then obviously about 3 minutes from the end, we're booking taxis, getting into Edinburgh. We're going to be like, running down Princess Street. And then finish at the end with the draw, and I've never been so just emotionally exhausted.
Yeah,
like we ended up going to sleep at like 10:30 or whatever it was, just because like you can't do anything. We've been so high, we've been so low.
I remember just about to. I don't switch off games. I kind of grunt my teeth and like, well, that's that or whatever. 31-0, and I'm like, I'm going to turn it off, because this is perfect to watch. And then charge down, McInally pins the ears back of all the players to do it as well.
Hey, he's an athlete, to be fair to him. Like, you keep remembering he was a back row until, like, he was on the bench for Scotland as a back row.
Yeah, that's true.
He's obviously done well at being a hooker, but you got a feel for the guy. Like, you've got this close to playing for Scotland as a back row, and Scotland turn around and go, "You're not going to make it, mate. How about you move position?"
Yeah,
and he's done well, and I think he's one of the probably people that have actually converted pretty well to being a hooker.
That's fair.
Like, I know they went through a stage of not just Scotland, but everyone's like, "Oh crap, we need hookers. You look like a stubby back row. We'll chuck you in there." No, I think Rambo's done well, to be fair to him. But yeah, he's athletic.
Yes, I think it just catches, because when you think of interceptions or charge downs, you think maybe the wingers or the fullback or the centre should do it, not the hooker or the second. And it's always or the hookers that do it.
Yeah, so there's a lot of time put into those organisational things. So off kickoffs, for example, it'd be the second row. Like the kickoff would be set up so the second row's in that position to do it.
Yeah.
As it's one of the skills that he'll genuinely practice is how to charge down. And like there's a reason they're always there, is it's part of their remit now, pretty much, is to try and charge down kicks. Yeah.
How many balls did you take to the face trying to charge down?
You see, it's not that you don't actually take that many to the face, because you're never early for a kick. You're always either just in time or late. So it's all you're either hitting your hands or it's gone before you get there.
Maybe I'm just the unfortunate one that just kept taking.
Although I have got a member. So Gordon Reid, great guy. If you haven't got him on the podcast, you should. because he has got a story about everything. We're playing at Scotland for Glasgow, and Pete Horn spiraled a kick straight into his face. Like, Pete was in the 22 looking for a spiral kick to clear it out, get it out. Yeah. And Gordy had just turned around square in the face, knocked him out. And basically he got up trying to fight with our physio, Lisa, at the time. Basically like, who hit me? Who hit me? I'm going to get him. I'm going to get him. Like, Gordy's quite an aggressive guy when he wants to be. And Lisa's there trying like, calm down. No one hit you. No, yeah, they did. They hit me. I'm down. No, you got hit in the face with a ball. And then obviously it got brought out at every opportunity.
Of course.
Take the piss a little bit. So
naturally.
So yeah, if you do charge down your own kicks, you do get hit in the face. So, was that what you did as well, or?
I don't even know. I think it was like one of two charge downs I ever did, and I thought I had it. I didn't put my hands up. I put my hands like there. Bang! Square in the face. Completely missed the hand. Straight in the face. Nice. Got the try though. Got the try, so it's all good.
Got the try. Were you crying as well because you got hit in the eyes and everything? And you're like,
no, I was lying in a heap at the side. I didn't see the try.
Oh, I thought you meant you got it and then you scored the try. No, you were just the idiot that stood in the way of the ball. Okay.
I got it in the 5 meter channel, took it square off the face. I'm lying in a heap on the side of the floor. Look up and everyone's like, "Hey," and I'm like, "Hey, cool, whatever." Yeah. Well, oh well, it happened. Who is your dream second row partner, past and present? You could pick one of each.
It's an interesting one. Obviously, I've been very lucky to play with quite a few good ones over the last couple of years, and the really easy and boring option would be like Mario Toje. He's all right at second row. Yeah, you know, like he'll do. I would take him in my team if I needed him. I don't know, but looking back over, there's a guy called James Hudson who I was at Newcastle with. He was at London Irish with Bob Casey and Nick Kennedy, and he was a really good line. He taught me a lot about the line out when I was younger, and he's still one of my good mates. I'd say for familiarity, I would say he's up there. I mean, I played my first cap with Al, and that was good. But then it depends what sort of team you wanted. If you want a team to gnaw them more, Rob Harley, get Rob Harley in there any day of the week. Him and I are, I think, one and the same, which my wife and his girlfriend are thankful for because we annoy each other, but also detest because they're never really certain that like they feel like we get on better than we do with our wife and girlfriends. So I don't know.
Fair enough. One more question before we go into something a bit different. Jack Wilson has asked, what drives you to be successful?
I don't know. It's a really interesting question. It's something that, having come into the world I'm in now, which is consultancy, if I could bottle that and sell it, I'll be doing very well for myself.
There we go.
But a lot of it is being competitive and being inquisitive, and stubborn as well. I mean, one of the facts that I've been told, I'm the shortest international second row in the professional era. Yeah.
Okay. How tall are you?
6'4".
Huh.
So yeah.
You might be then.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I am. But like, and it's a bit of being stubborn, and I'm not sure I particularly like winning. Like, obviously, it's great and all. Yeah. But I feel like I hate losing more than I like winning.
Yeah, I get you.
And I think that's something to do. It's just sticking. And I think people, like when I was at school, we had quite a good school team, and I was certainly one of the better players in my team, but I wouldn't say I was the best player. It's not like I was, I don't know, Danny Cipriani when he came out of school, who was like practically the second coming of Christ or something. But you know, like I wasn't definitely the best. But the reason I've had a 15-year career is because I stuck to it, tried to get better, inquisitive. I was stubborn. I had a lot of luck along the way.
Yeah.
But it's that stuff. It's like a desire to try hard gets you a long way.
Sure.
I think that's probably one of the best ways to be successful. But then even I still remember a lot of the sort of not successes is probably like, I mean, 2014 sitting at the RDS having lost the final to Leinster.
Yeah.
It's still like you standing there holding this medal and Leinster are over there celebrating around this thing. Poppers are going everywhere. And you're just like, great, this is crap.
Yeah.
Like it's a terrible feeling. And that's probably what drives you a little bit.
Well, I like the balance that you've come up with there. I like that. So we're going to move on to get to know Tim as a person. So nothing really to do with rugby. Cats or dogs?
Dogs.
Yeah, that's easy, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the battle we're having at the moment is what dog to get for the family.
Oh, so what's the options then? What's the top 3 options?
Oh, like we had a border terrier, and we don't anymore. I would happily get another border terrier.
Yeah.
But my wife's parents' dog doesn't like border terriers, so that's not really good. And my wife would like a small horse of a dog. We look like Rhodesian Ridgeback, Vizsla, Weimaraner, that sort of thing. And while I'm not against it, I just feel like a border terrier is more practical.
That's fair. That's fair.
And it's just this like ongoing battle. We'll get a dog at some point, I'm sure, but yeah.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Do you have any tattoos?
No.
Would you ever get a tattoo?
Yeah, but it'd have to mean something. I think the only tattoo I've seen and gone, I would get that, with a massive caveat that I would have to have gone to the Olympics, is the Olympic rings. I think something like that, I think would be the only thing. That's probably the only tattoo I've gone, yeah, that actually looks good.
Okay. Fair enough. Favorite song or music genre?
80s.
Still 80s?
Yeah, 80s. I mean, also quite, I mean, started getting into like, well, not getting into it, it's like reliving my youth of like 90s pop, Britpop, like Blur, and I mean, even the occasionally Peter Andre with Mysterious Girl. That's like now 32 to 38. That's it. Like now what I call music, 32 to 38, that sort of thing.
Fair enough.
That sort of era.
Yeah, that's good. Favorite film?
Oh.
Or top 5 if there's too many.
I don't know. Top Gun. I mean, Top Gun's got to be up there. Top Gun Maverick as well. That's kind of Shawshank Redemption as well. That was a good one.
It's a classic, yeah.
They're probably like my top 3. I'm sure I've forgotten like a really obvious one. Although my guilty pleasure, like if you ever been on Netflix around Christmas time, the number of rom-coms they get out that are basically to do with like a man works or a woman works in New York City and they're big important executive. They go back to their little old country town and they find love. Love those. Like obviously Christmas Netflix. It's a real guilty pleasure, but rom-coms.
No, I've been made to watch the occasional rom-com, and not all of them are bad. So
no, I mean, About Time. If you haven't seen that, that's a great film.
I can't remember the titles of the ones I remember. So
basically, it's got Rachel McAdams in it. it's about a guy who meets Rachel McAdams, likes her, but is really useless. However, the men in his family have got this like trait that they can sort of turn back time, and it's basically all about this and discovering that you can't, once you have a kid, you can't turn back time before that child, or unless then your child will change.
Yeah.
And I mean, if it's the sort of film you can't watch when you're hungover and in a slightly emotionally delicate state, because you'll end up crying. But that's good.
Fair.
I mean,
If there was a film on the career of Tim Swinson, who would you pick to play you in the film?
Josh Hartnett,
Josh Hartnett.
Black Hawk Down.
Ah, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's more going out just because I think he looked like me at some point in my life. Certainly doesn't now. When I was younger. I don't know. In terms of actors, I mean, I'll stick with Josh Hartnett just for the pure likeness of it.
Yeah, that's cool. So what would you have the title be called?
That's deep.
It's not even the deepest question I've got down.
I mean, probably playing on Once Were Warriors, but that's obviously a bit of a, what's it called, an homage to a Kiwi film by the same name. I watched that a few times, but I don't know. I think the interesting thing is I've spent so long of my, especially the last half of my career, to not be known as a rugby player. Like, I don't know. It's one of those interesting things about rugby is when you go and meet people and they find out you're a player, all they talk to you about is rugby, and it is really interesting. But it's like you talking about your job. And I found when I got to, I think 26, 27, maybe a bit older, that I felt all I was a rugby player. And that was pretty crap. And so I spent a lot of time. I tried to do things to speak about. And I mean, I know I have kids. Like you basically become your kids, and you try and have a night off for kids, and all you do is talk about your kids, and all your friends are now your kids' friends' parents. And but it's, I don't know. I wouldn't have the title as something to do with rugby. I think it would be something broader than that, something more opaque.
Yeah, I get that. That's fair. Where is your dream holiday destination?
I don't know. Playing on holidays I've been on, it would be Laguna Beach or Southern California.
Nice.
So I spent 2 summers out there training. So I left when I was at Newcastle. I'll leave the day after the season and come out the day before pre-season, live in Orange County, train at a gym out there called Juggernaut, which is run by a guy called Chad Smith, who now has a app called Juggernaut AI. But at the time I went, he was a former shot putter who was a raw powerlifter. And he basically did training for athletes, and they had a couple of guys go to the NFL, and they ended up training with the American football players. And so there's one guy that went NFL, there's a handful that were playing Division 2 schools or Division 1 AA. So like not a higher state, but like they're a little bit below, and then some high school kids.
Nice.
It's just great. It was just great living there and spending 4th of July on Laguna Beach on a house that walked onto it. I mean, I don't know how I got there. I somehow made friends with the right person in the gym because they got invited to this party and I got taken along. So I spent 4th of July on Laguna Beach, which was pretty sweet. That was good.
Happy days. Yeah. What is your current Netflix binge? Not rom-coms. We've established like a rom-com, but it's not Christmas time.
So it's not quite Netflix, but the last series we watched was Criminal Minds, the newest Criminal Minds.
Okay.
I haven't watched any of the other series. My wife has watched them like avidly, and I basically I just put it on, and I actually got into it. I thought I was going to just like do something on my phone or not really pay attention. And an episode in, I was sort of there going, I need to watch the next one. What's going on? I need to know what's happening. And so yeah, that's probably the last one I got really deep into.
Nice. Any hobbies away from rugby?
So, I mean, depends. Stuff that I do at the moment or stuff that I've tried while I'm playing rugby. I mean,
both. You're our guest, so you can do both.
So, I mean, the issue I had in the last few years at Glasgow, I was doing a full-time degree. I was set up the Players Association, was running that, and I had a job, and I had initially one child and then two children while all of this was going on. And I had no free time. I had time that I should be doing something else, was the best way I described how I was.
Mm-hmm.
And so in terms of my hobbies, they became my hobbies because it's all I did. But I have a guitar. I tried to play a guitar. I then had to have my tendon reattached to my finger. So, and it's on my left hand. So I'm left-handed. I'm trying to play a guitar right-handed, so I can borrow someone else's guitar. Because what's the point of learning left-handedly? And anyway, I pulled the tendon out of my other hand now, so I can't bend that finger. Like my ring finger on my right hand, it can't bend. And so that makes strumming really hard. So yeah, that's pretty much been a bit of an issue. I really enjoy cooking. I do a lot of cooking here, like when I'm at home. I like trying new things. That's pretty good. It's just a lot. Like you get like coffee as well. I like coffee. I mean, I've got a professional machine. So once you get into the real world and have a proper job, you don't get time for many hobbies. Like my weekends at the moment are filled with chopping down trees, cutting up firewood. Yeah, like so when the house we're renovating, or we've just about finished renovating, was untouched for about 40 years. It was bought in the 80s by an old couple, and they did it up when they moved in, and then he lived longer than I think he probably expected. Didn't touch it since the mid 80s.
Yeah.
And even the bits he touched wasn't the whole house. So we have had a lot to do. We've had a lot of the garden to sort out. And so yeah, using a chainsaw at the moment.
Fair enough. Okay. Yeah. That's a unique hobby. Okay.
Is that your child in the background?
Yeah, I don't know if you could hear him. Sorry about that. He's obviously just woke up. So
how old is he?
He's not on turn 3. He's 3 now. So
okay, yeah. Our youngest is 3, and fair play to you. We're delighted that we've got our 2, and we don't want to see
one's enough, but no, he's good. It's just been a long day for him. So
no, I can imagine. Like we had that over Easter. Saw the grandparents, did all of that.
Yeah, and
she was just knackered and ended up having a full-blown crime scene tantrum.
Yeah, I mean, he's done well today. As of recording, we did get to meet the Edinburgh. Sorry, we're Edinburgh fans. Sorry, Tim. Yeah. But he got to meet all his favourite players. He met Gilco, he met Pierre Schumann, Duan van der Merwe, all of them, and it was great. So, yeah. I'm quickly going to wrap this up because it does sound like you need me. Favourite post-match drink or social drink if you're out in the town? What's the...
So I'm not a huge fan of beer.
Okay.
Like, lager, like don't get me wrong, it's not like I'll turn it down if there's not another option, but I wouldn't ever go for it. And I basically it's really tough in a rugby club to come up with that when you're young, because it's basically all you get given. And really, my last few years at Glasgow, I ended up having Aperol Spritz.
Okay.
Because, like, especially when we played in Italy. But, like, that's pretty good. Guinness, love a Guinness. Gin and tonic probably. That'd probably be the mix. Gin and tonic, Aperol Spritz, or Guinness.
Fair enough. Final question for you today, Tim. One thing you'd like to be remembered for, just in life.
Working hard.
I love that.
Being hardworking. I think. That's probably the best thing to be. That's what I'd like to be remembered for. It's how I try to play rugby. And it's so far, it's how I'm having to try being my new job. I'm having to learn an awful lot, which means I have to work hard.
That's good. I love that. And I could, from based on watching your career at Glasgow and Scotland, you are a hard worker. I'll give you that. But the book, Tim, you've absolutely crushed it, and I can't thank you for.
Oh Christ! It's 20 to 10.
I know it's been a long one, but it's all worth it.
Yeah,
so that's the conversation. That's what we love.
Yeah.
But dad duty's called. You understand?
No, I've probably got to go and actually cook dinner.
Oh, good. Well, this has been the final whistle with Tim Swinson, and we will see you next time.
Cheers.